Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and it's election season, and we have with us this evening, again, Lorinda Visnick, who is running for School Committee at Large, covering wards 4, 5, and 6. And we had a discussion previously about how's it going with the schools, and there's a lot more to talk about, so we're going to do it again.
Here we go.
So basically, we got to the point, I guess, of you don't think the override is necessary. Just passed the budget, at least the school committee passed the budget. Goes on to City Hall to get massaged again. And it seems to be within reasonable increases, again, because of the settlement with the teachers, BTA, and other things that need to get done.
I think that in general, on a really big picture scale, we as a society, we have Beverly as our own community, and we want to do what's best for our educators and for our children. We want to do what's best for our community. And we operate inside of a bigger system. And that bigger system traditionally has said that there are a number of professions where the average worker, more than 50, well more than 50% of the average worker is female, and those professions tend to be underpaid. And so I'm sure a lot of people would have issue with that statement, but I stand pretty firm in that statement, and I'll give you a very different example, nursing. And so, the average, you're most likely to see a female nurse, and nurses are incredibly important to our society, and yet they tend to be underpaid. And so that as a base of our systems causes problems, right? In the base of an very wide-reaching economic system. And so how do we solve that kind of problem? And I'm a fan of saying I don't get to decide that, Tyrese Halliburton gets paid a lot of money. He's the point guard for the Indiana Pacers, and they just lost last night to the Knicks. That he gets paid a lot of money to play basketball, or that somebody who makes a movie gets paid a lot of money to be an entertainer. Right? You and I don't get to decide that. Yep. And so we have to operate within the constructs that we have available to us. And so if I could give the teachers and the paras and anybody in my school system even more money, I absolutely would. But there's this larger context of this is what our society says. Yeah. And is that unjust? It may well be. And so again, you and I have talked a lot about the fact that I'm in school again. I'm studying some of this stuff. I would love to change the way we do things on a much wider scale. I would love for us to be a more just society.
So you're working on a PhD in what exactly?
In public policy.
Okay. Have you picked a thesis yet?
I'm hoping yes. Well, I can't say yes because I'm not to that point in my process yet.
If you had your druthers, what would you pick?
My plan is to do a deep dive into affordable housing with wraparound social services, and to see if, to compare a place that offers wraparound social services, basically coordinate all the different benefits that our government and or nonprofits deliver, coordinate those things and see if we have better outcomes than non-coordinated services. And so the housing location itself can be the service hub. That's a bad elevator speech. I have 2 more years to be able to work on it. So, but yeah, I think we could say housing as a services hub.
What do you mean by coordinated?
What I mean is that if you have somebody who is has a Section 8 voucher,
yep.
That means they're poor enough that they're getting subsidized housing. They're probably also poor enough to be getting SNAP benefits. They might also be getting health insurance and a child care voucher. And they might qualify for any given school is offering right now, thanks to the millionaire's tax, free college education. So if I want to come in and do workforce development in your housing location, because again, from a social worker point of view, you meet your clients where they are. So if I come into your housing location and I pull you out of your apartment and I say, do you want to learn to be a phlebotomist? Because guess what? My community hospital needs more phlebotomists. And you want a better paying job. And that's great. So we're going to do this marriage. We're going to coordinate what are my local needs. I'm going to workforce development and coordinate those funds and train you to be a phlebotomist. And from, a lot of places around here, you could walk to work. We don't even need to rely on the MBTA. However, when I say I'm going to offer you this job training, I also know that you probably have children. And when you're going to be sitting in training, it's going to be dinner time. And your children are going to have their homework. And so it's not enough for me to say, I want to offer you this job training. You cannot walk away from your children and leave your children unattended in their home. So that's an example of coordinating the services to say, while I'm offering you this job training, I will also offer you childcare and maybe homework help and probably dinner for them and maybe for you too while you're sitting in class. Yeah. Because if I don't do that, then I can say all I want that I'm going to offer you workforce training, but there are still major barriers in the way of you being able to take advantage of that opportunity.
That's anchor point to some extent.
That is absolutely anchor point, and that will be hopefully the location of one of my 2 case studies.
Okay, and that's another show for another day.
Yeah. You can talk to Andrew about that.
But you get into this situation that, we've got a school system that, as we mentioned the last time, is not up to snuff as far as the testing goes. And you can always raise the question of, is the testing really testing stuff that's important, or it just makes it easy to come up with a score? And at the same time that, kids want to eventually go off to college. Well, that gets to be another issue that bothers me, that is that the only reason to go to high school, to get accredited so you can get into a college? And in the real world, there are lots of other jobs around that don't require a college education.
Absolutely. And in general, there are many trades who the average employee age is now getting up there, right? In the 60s, in the 70s. Yeah. We're going to have a crisis for sure. Try to get a plumber, try to get an electrician at your house right now. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah, so there are a lot of these technical trades that require a license. And you can't get the license without having gone through some sort of technical training. And I know in my father's case, he went to school nights to get his electrical license. And this is the way it used to be. Not sure that's the system right now, and I'm not sure that people can take advantage of it. And I worry about the kids that end up in high school and another course in Shakespeare is not their thing.
Yeah.
And as a result, they're a tactile learner. And they would do much better in a hands-on type of environment. And back when Baker was still governor, he gave out $10 million to a bunch of schools around this area to enhance their technical programs. And I think it was Peabody that got one of these dummies, bodies that acts like a real person, so you can practice nursing on them or stuff like that. And
it's like the old game Operation, but a little bit more realistic.
Yes. And Salem got something to add to their program. Beverly didn't get anything. So I'm wondering, is that something that needs to be worked on in Beverly to get more emphasis? Because as we've thrashed around before, we don't have the patent trade school anymore.
Right. So I think there's a few things, and first I'm gonna go to yet another controversial topic, which is we are in an agreement with the school formerly called Essex Tech. We're in a non-compete agreement with them.
Yeah.
And there is an effort right now at the state level to say that the spots in trade schools that do exist should be given out based on a lottery system versus based on performance.
Yeah.
And I think you and I, I'm not going to assume that. I believe that there are many children who would be better served over at the Tech, but they can't get in.
Yeah.
And so there are limited seats. And if we opened it up to a lottery, that maybe more children who needed to go there versus want to go there would get in. And now, so some number are going to go to that tech school. And now we have these things called pathways and collaborative pathways. So we are, not only do we send children to Essex Tech full time, we send some there after dark.
Yeah.
So when they're juniors and seniors in their afternoons, they leave campus to go do internships, hands-on, real experiential learning, and those classrooms are empty, and so we get to send children over there. So they go for, like, in essence, a half a day.
Yeah.
So they're here for some, they're over there for some, this after dark idea. We are in an after dark agreement with Salem as well. And so when you say, oh, Salem got something and we didn't, we're sharing, right? And we have programs that Salem doesn't have. Same thing with Peabody. And so there is a movement across the state at the last MASC conference that I went to. Especially the regional schools have to do this. And the further out in Mass you go, the more important it becomes because the resources are even more limited out there. And so you say, all right, well, I really want to offer a nursing class, a nursing pathway, but I don't have enough resources or I don't have enough students to really support doing that. But if I invite my 5 neighboring communities to send their students to me in the afternoon, we can run that pathway in the afternoon. So I don't want you to think about it like, oh, well, we didn't get any money, because we are doing this collaborative thing with our neighbors.
Well, one of the things that bothers me about that agreement with Essex Tech, that they would take our trade school interested kids if we agreed not to compete with them.
Yeah.
They didn't meet their half of the bargain. They're not taking all our kids.
The demand is high. And
Yeah.
so again, I think the pendulum has really swung, right? There was, maybe it was when my oldest was in high school, this real push that, and we used to read out at the school committee meetings what percentage of our high school students were going on to college. And we celebrated that. And we're like, look, 90-some%, right? High 90s. So this is great, right? And there was this, again, societal expectation. I want you to do better than I did. How do you do better in your life than I did? You get a better education. This is the key to prosperity. This is part of the American dream.
Yeah.
Education is the great equalizer, right? Horace Mann said that a long time ago. Yeah. And so, but then the push has come back, right? Because it didn't work. College really is not for everyone.
Yeah.
And so now the pendulum has swung back, and I'm old enough to have experienced both ends of that. And I don't know, maybe the pendulum's not done swinging yet. Away from everybody should go to college, get a college degree, get a better job, to, hey, I can make a really good living working a trade. Maybe I'm in the electrical union. Maybe I'm in the, maybe I start to work in offshore wind, or, doesn't have to be clean energy. There are, it could just be electrical.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's, when we look longer term, right, we have some work to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other classic one is you go into the Navy and you learn to be a nuclear power manager.
Right.
And you got a job when you come out. So, Yeah, there is all sorts of opportunities like that. The military is another example of where you can go to get hands-on kind of learning.
Right, and we are
like-
blessed to have the JROTC program at
Yeah.
Beverly High,
Yeah.
and we have had some wonderful people in that position.
Yeah. So there are some opportunities, but at the same time, I can remember when my kids were in the high school, the trade school was considered to be a dumping ground for kids that they didn't behave too well in class. They acted up and weren't doing well. So there used to be a very quick pathway. You take a patent trading course in the trade school and get your diploma, walk across the street to the shoe, and you had a job. Well, that's
Well,
all changed. So.
You know, this bad behavior, let's talk about if your skill set, if your natural inclination is not to be interested in, you mentioned earlier, Shakespeare,
Yeah.
or poetry, or, AP history, or whatever, right? Then why would you want to sit there through those kinds of classes? Right? And so, unfortunately, again, historically, how did we build our schools? We built them like we built our factories.
Yeah.
And there was a need for that. And so that cookie cutter approach, you learn more, you do better. What's Maya Angelou's statement, right?
Yeah.
When you learn more, do better. And so now we're learning that we need to do better. And the
Yeah.
pendulum is swinging. And the field of education is just like the field of science. We should be learning every day.
Yeah. Well, it's not a matter of do better. It's got to do different. And I keep harping on this particular subject because I happen to be a tactical learner.
Yeah.
And I'm well aware of the shortcomings of not being focused on it. And one of my big complaints is English teachers are so hypocritical that they always complained about, well, you got to be more creative, but they never gave me credit for my creative spelling. And history just bored the classes. All it is dates and numbers and people. And one of my experiences with the Army is training sergeant was leaving and gave me a stack of books. And they were history books. He must have belonged to the War Book of the Month Club. And I read The Armada by Garrett Mattingly. And that was his story. And that was so totally different. And it's just an experience I have never gotten in the public school system or even in the parochial school system. So I think there's a need to change a lot of things. And I'm hoping that when you get elected to the school committee, you're going to.
So again, I think, there are some constraints there, right? And part of the constraint is, what do we have? Well, like I said earlier, life is a bell curve.
Yeah.
And so when we say, I need to for sure take care of the bulk of the middle, and then maybe my exceptions are my tail, my leading, the tail and the lead, the head. And so what do I do for the bulk? And how, I can't have 50 different curriculum.
No.
So where I think we have an incredible advantage is that any given teacher is a fabulous teacher. And so although they might be using a textbook that might be that textbook that you talked about that was dry and boring, maybe that teacher is delivering the content of that textbook via incredible storytelling, right? Maybe they've built their own pedagogy such that they have a narrative and they get children interested. Right? They pull them in. They find out what might make you tick.
Okay,
And now I'm going to hook you
when
in.
the city is hiring teachers, how do they dig that particular characteristic out and say that, tell me what your narrative is relative to, I don't know, the invention of printed press? printing press.
And be brutally honest with you, that's not my job. I don't know. I'm not the person sitting there doing that interview. The only interview I get to sit in on is the superintendent
Yeah.
of schools.
But at the same time, you got the string on him. And again, this is what I think people are looking for when they have somebody on the school committee in their ward, go to them and say, hey, my kid is not getting da-da-da, and why not? And expect somebody to get to the administration of the school and say, we need a change.
Right, and we really hope that we don't get to that spot, right, George? I mean, because really, we know that we should have a partnership. Children's education is best served when the families are in a partnership with the teachers, with the school administration, with the district administration, and we're over here. We should kind of be the last stop. I want to believe that we hire good people. I want to believe that any given principal is fabulous at their job, and they hire their teachers. And I want to. Interviewing and hiring is difficult, hands down. But I also know that I've had 4 children go through the schools and have incredible experiences. And I've had different teachers be able to make connections with different children, right? So child number 1 really liked this teacher, child number 2 not so much. But that's okay because somebody else appealed to child number 2. Yeah. And so that is part of the beauty of the creativity. Let me empower you to do what you do well. This is your career. I trust you to do it. And if in fact you're not doing a good job, if you got a whole bunch of parents complaining, if your principal doesn't like you don't come to work on time or whatever, then there are structures to work towards a get well plan. Let's call it that, right? And so assume the best. Right? Brené Brown says that. Assume the best in people instead of assuming the worst. Mm-hmm. And then if something's not working, and we really are that last stop. If you went through and you met with the teacher, and then you met with the principal, and then you met with the superintendent of schools, absolutely come to me. And then it goes back down, right? But I'm not gonna be sitting in that student's classroom critiquing that teacher. We're not even allowed to do that, even if I wanted to do that, right? But we can ask the questions, right? We can say, what are we doing? I've heard whatever, or so there's a line there.
That's the other thing too. You're going around collecting signatures, and you should be getting feedback from the people about, it's working. No, it's not.
I'm a fan of saying that democracy is not a spectator sport.
Yep.
And I think you know that any given one of our meetings, we don't have anybody in the crowd. We maybe have some people watching on BevCam. Yeah. I said the other night, one of the beauties, one of the few good things that I can point to about COVID is that we started having our meetings on Zoom, and people wanted information, and so they started attending remotely. And so I hope we continue that because I want more people to be involved, right? I go to city council meetings. I'm often the only person in the chamber. Yeah. And so it's not a spectator sport. We need people to be involved. We want people to be, there used to be an old commercial, an educated consumer is our best customer. Yep. And so I want people to understand, how does the charter work? How do different things in our city work? And if you don't like it, please come join me. And I usually sit in the back row at City Council, or join us at the middle school library for our meetings. Get involved. It's how things work.
Well, we've come to the time where it's your turn to make your pitch to the...
My pitch.
Yeah.
I would love to continue to serve the residents and the children of the city of Beverly. I myself am a lifelong learner. I have an incredible amount of institutional knowledge. I have a lot of experience, and I am working on every day, improving myself. I'm currently enrolled in an advanced degree program. I'm trying to get smarter faster in order to better serve. And so I hope that my body of work speaks for itself. I am incredibly committed to living here, helping other people live here, and making the community the best that it can be.
Well, wish you the best of luck on your campaign,
Thank you.
and
Thanks for having me today.
thanks for coming back again. Yeah.
Always enjoy talking with you.
Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching us this evening. And as I always say, if you've got a comment, my email address is in the credits. Send me a note. And if you've got a longer statement, there's room for you here at the table. Thanks again, and see you next time.